about how long that I've known Jonathan and Greg. I guess I met them about the same time. I was a frequent speaker at the church that they both attended in Denver, Colorado. And I guess that's been 15 or 20 years ago. And I've been keeping up with Jonathan, being a part of our church, and then also watching his videos and everything he does on Instagram and what he does on Facebook. This has to be a groundbreaking idea that needs to spread around the globe in other industries. And I applaud you for each and every one of you that make this happen tonight. Let me give it up to those that are involved. Well, I've been wanting to say something and come to one of y'all's conferences and see what you do. And so I watch Jonathan online. I see all of the different places you guys have big conferences at. And I thought to myself, man, I would like just to speak for a minute at one of those events. So I told Brother Jonathan, I said, Brother Jonathan, I want to come speak at an event. And he told us, I don't know that you're ready. And I thought, I've been in ministry for 43 years. I'm in the people business. I've done national television. I've hosted national television. And so I told him, I said, man, I want to speak at one of them. And he said, well, let me go to your Facebook and your Instagram and see some of your work. Now, this is a guy that has sat under my ministry for many years. And he told me, he says, I don't know you're ready. And then I told him, I said, look, Jonathan, I want to do that and I'll do it for free. He said, now you're ready. So, well, Jonathan, thank you so much. I'm just giving it all back. Give it up for Jonathan, amen. I want to talk to you tonight from my heart for just a few moments. I won't be long. Blessed are the brief, they'll be asked back. But after 43 years of ministry, I transitioned to Pastor Kelly, who did the opening prayer. And it's been a wonderful season, and I have gone into another arena of my life. And as I look back over the journey, I think it's important for us to understand that in life, we're called to a higher purpose than just being successful. And if your eye is on success today, you're going to miss what is really important in life. I want to talk to you about 3 levels of living. There are people today, during the season of the pandemic, that has reduced their life to a survival mode. They're happy if they can just survive. It's a fact that the workforce in America is dropping quickly because people don't want to work. And so it's important for us to evaluate where we are. And if we're looking at life, we have to understand that all of us transition. We either transition by choice or we will transition by chance. And it's so important listening to the young men and young ladies on this stage tell their story that they made a choice in their transition. So if we transition by either chance or by choice, and we live our life in that arena, transformation is something that begins from within. I'm reminded of the young lady that told her story of how she became transformed by changing the way she thought. I listened, and I tell you, if I was still pastoring, well, I'd have you at my church speaking next Sunday if I was still pastoring. I enjoyed that thoroughly. But as I began to listen to stories, it made me really realize that all of us today, we have a choice. Let me give you 3 things to think about. Number 1, you can live your life in the realm of survival. Survival, that's where you just live paycheck to paycheck. And you're happy if you make it. You know people that are like that. You know, they're always stretching their money. If I can just stretch it till next week, it's going to be a good week. And they live their life in the realm of survival. They're happy just to make it. The second level is the level of success. You got money, you got a nice car, you live in the right zip code. But success can leave you empty. I stood at the grave of a woman that owned an oil company in Dallas, who was a member of our church, who passed away. I went to the grave to do the service, and there was 0 people there. She was a success. She had money. Her own daughter came and said, "Preacher, get this over with. I got to get back out of town." But she didn't really have a life. I look back over some of the great men and the women that we have seen on television, people like John Belushi. John actually was a very successful man, but he begged his chauffeur to run over. Marilyn Monroe, all the wealth. Kurt Cobain, top of the career. But none of them, with their success, was happy. So if you chase the dollar, and that's what's important to you, you may get it, but it may not be what you really want. So if our life is going to be lived in around where we're going to enjoy it, and it's going to mean something to us, then we have to move beyond success, way beyond survival, to the next realm, and that's significance. You know what you guys are doing today? You're here because you desire to live a life of significance. You're wanting to pour into someone else and help them achieve their goals and their dreams. That is a life that is worth living. And so how do we move into that level of significance? What do we do that will get us to that place? When you live a life of significance, it really has to do with how you handle your time. All of us have 2 things in life that matter. Really, there's 2 things in life that matter. How you handle your time. We've all been blessed with 24 hours in a day, 365 days in a year, 60 seconds in a minute. But what are we doing with that time? How are we using our time? So an indicator of the type of life you're going to live and whether or not you'll live a life that is transformed, because transformation is just change. It was Einstein that said if you always do what you've always done, you'll always have what you've always had. It was Einstein that said you can't solve a problem on the same level in which it's created. And it was Einstein that said insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. So what do? Whether you are in roofing, you're a doctor, you're a nurse, it doesn't matter. The question is, what are you doing with your 24? Because who you are is a result of how you will spend your time. A transformed life isn't because you have accomplished great things in the sight of others, but it's that when you lay down at night, you know that you have done your very best. It was the Apostle Paul that says that we are to be transformed. That word transformed simply means to be changed. How do we do it? What can I start doing today? Now, outward change, you can do some outward change. You can, with the hands of a skilled surgeon, you can get about anything you want. But that doesn't deal with the inner person. So our focus has to move beyond. It has to move beyond just us. People that live a life in survival are only concerned about therefore and no more. People that live a life of success, they get all the wealth, but then they're concerned that somebody is going to get it. But when you live a life of significance, you're living your life in a way that puts you in a place. You know, we're living in a world that everybody has an excuse for why they are the way they are. And excuses are simply nothing more than crutches for people that are uncommitted. Yeah. So you got to move beyond that. You got to begin to see things differently and begin to move differently. You're here today because you're problem solvers. Doctors solve medical problems. Lawyers, legal problems. Those in your industry, you solve construction problems and roofing problems. So when we realize that we are here to contribute to the lives of others, that makes all the difference in the world. Two kinds of people. Significant people that live a life of significance, they are the balcony people. In life, you've got basement and you've got balcony people. Balcony people always pick you up. Balcony people always make you feel better. Balcony people comes with solutions. I reminded the young lady that's on the end, and she said that, she is more like a thermostat than a thermometer. A thermometer can read the temperature, but a thermostat can change an atmosphere. And that's the way we need to be. When we walk into a room, we need to change the atmosphere because people understand there are people there that care. I'm going to give you just a couple of points. Here it is. Number one, the passing of time that we've all been given, we must be accountable for our time. We must be accountable for our time. My question is, who are you mentoring? Who are you being mentored by? Let me say this. If you're the smartest one in your group, you need another group. You have to find yourself stretching and growing and becoming more and more, not just about what you want. I'm thinking of the young men and the young ladies on this stage today that told their stories. You're not to live your life in a solitary. We're all here to benefit and to be a blessing one to another. So what are we doing? How are we going to make a life of significance in our own life, in our own businesses? And that's simply, we have to begin to be accountable for our time. And when we become accountable for our time, it means that we are answering to other people. We all need to have somebody. Someone said, well, but I'm the owner and I think that I'm the one that should have the authority and the power. There's nothing like a team. There's nothing like a team. One of my favorite scriptures in the Bible is in the book of Psalms 133. It says, how good and pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity. I was thinking about Greg, talking about the group that he has. We're better together. You know that, don't you? This room is better. Your businesses are successful. And you're doing things that others dream about. And the reason is because you came together. So there's something about unity. If all you got is two teeth in your head, they look better together. I'm telling you the truth. So you got to understand that we all need each other. And so you may be in a tough season today. You may be in a place that you're thinking, how am I going to make it? Use the time that God has given you to be a blessing to others. Use the time that God has given you. We've all had those dark times. The road of life is like this. We have ups and we have downs. This being the Christmas season, I love the nativity scene. And in the nativity scene, you have the three wise men that follow the star. Have you ever thought in your life you had everything together and everything was going just right, and you're following your star, and it ends up leading you to a stable? The question is, what do you do in the stables of your life? In the middle of the mess, there'll be a messenger there. In the middle of a bad situation where it looks like you don't know how you can come through it, there'll be someone there that can help you through the struggle. But just because you hit a hard place, don't give up. People that live a life of significance, they will see their lives changed and help change the lives of others, and people change. They'll transform their life for three reasons. Here you go. Number one, they hurt enough, they have to change. Have you ever been there where you just hurt so much, you felt like you had to change? That's number one. Number two, they see enough, they're inspired to change. They want to change. They hear the story of these men that have seen their lives transformed, and they have seen the blessing that only God can give. And you look at that and say, I wonder if that could be me. You see something that says, I could do that. I could be that. And then the third one is, you learn enough that you want to change. So what are we doing? We're all lifelong learners. From the cradle to the grave, we are lifelong learners. So if I can live a life of significance, it's going to help me in touching the lives of others, because here's what happens. If I live a life of significance and I see that you're weak, I'm going to bring strength to you. I will do something that will help strengthen your life. If I'm really going to live a life of significance and I see that you're broken, I'm going to be there to help put you back together. Somebody did that for Jonathan. Somebody did that for this young man on the front row, for others. So we have to look and find that there's somebody that is broken, that if we really live a life that makes a difference, we're going to be able to touch them. Then the third one is, it causes you to see others as valuable. You look at you look at your crew, you look at your office staff, you look at those around you, and you all of a sudden realize you could not do what you do had it not been for the team that you've been blessed with. So what we do is we need to celebrate their successes. We need to do something that makes them realize that they're loved and they're appreciated. And then we need to learn to value the gift of stability. Sometimes I had an old mentor growing up that always told me this. He said, your best ability is your stability. Are you stable? Are you there to help us? People know that if they're in trouble, they can come to you. And so those are a few things that will bring a transformation and a change to our life. Something else that is really important in the day in which we're living in, and it was mentioned on the stage, is a lot of times we have people that are interested in vision. What is your vision? But what is greater than vision is the culture you're creating. Because you can have a great vision to build a great company. But if the culture isn't there, and the core values of that culture isn't practiced, you'll never have a company of significance. So we got to find ourselves moving into that place. We're getting ready to enter into a brand new year. What are we going to do different in 22 that we did in 21? Because if we don't make a change, it'll be exactly the same thing. And you got to understand, your exit is remembered longer than your entrance ever will be. So how are we going to end the year? What are we going to do to make a difference in the lives of others? When we find ourselves looking at where we are and we think, man, I got to do something about my culture, the culture of our church, the culture of our business, the culture of our community, what can I do? If your culture is, we're going to be at work at 8 o'clock, and your company, and that is your vision, that is your core values, and everybody comes in at 9 o'clock, that culture will be costly. So we got to go into a new year looking at things different. If I could say one thing about the new year, what I think is important in moving into a new year, it is this. In 22, 3 things that everybody that is here needs to think about in your business strategy. Number 1, train. Are you expecting things out of people that you have not inspected? So you got to train. 3 things to do in the new year if you want a great new year. Number 1 is you have to train. Number 2, if you've got people that are not part of doing and going in the direction, then it may be time to transfer. Put them in a different area. And the third thing is, if you can't train them and you can't transfer them, then you have to terminate them. And that's never something that makes us feel good. So in 22, let me give you a few things that I think would be worth writing down. Proverbs says, you don't withhold good to a person when it's in your ability and your power to do it. But in that passage of Scripture, it's important for us to realize that people have to qualify for what you're going to do for them. They have to qualify. You know, listen, the Bible says you will have the poor with you always. You drive down the street, there's people say, we'll work for food. Have you ever tried to hire one of those? Yep. They don't want to work. And what we have to understand is, it was Paul Harvey said the best thing you can do for the poor is don't be one of them. And when we look at our life and we see where we're at, what can we do different that's going to help someone else? Let me give you some things to think about. In 22, remember the story of Jonah? Jonah has got his own ideas. He's going his own direction. We don't really focus much on the boat owner, but the boat owner had an entrepreneurial spirit. He had vision. He knew what he was doing. And he let the wrong guy on his boat. My question to you that is in business, maybe it only happens in churches. Have you ever gotten wet from somebody else's storm? You didn't know it was coming, that all of a sudden here's all this stuff coming on. And had that boat owner done a little bit more research, his business might have gone not in the direction it did when he allowed this man by the name of Jonah on the boat. So we have to be careful in 22 who we allow on our boat. All right, let me give you a few things to think about. In 22, write this down. You can't help people that will not disconnect from wrong people. It's impossible for you to help someone that will not disconnect from wrong people. If they're going to continue to do that, you need to reevaluate where they fit in your organization. Number two, you can't help a person that doesn't respect achievers. If you find somebody that is doing a great job, and you've got a team member that is critical of everything being done, that's an individual that will sabotage your future success. So in 22, make sure that you have people that disconnect from wrong people. When God wants to bless you, you know what He does? He sends somebody into your life. When the devil wants to mess you up, you know what he does? He sends somebody into your life. So you got to be careful. You got to begin to look where you're at, where you're going. And you have to find yourself in a place where you look and you see what is down the road, what you want to accomplish, and how you're going to do it. You can't help somebody that doesn't respect achievers. You can't help somebody that won't respect achievers. So we got to begin to look at it a little differently. You can't help a person that feels you're the reason for their problem. There are some people in life that are always looking at other people saying, you're the reason I'm in the shape I'm in. This one is a big one for me, is you can't help somebody that wants what you have, but not your advice. In 22, make sure those that you have on your team respect the advice that you give them. A wise man becomes wiser by wise counsel. And so I think it's important for us to surround ourselves with people that are achieving the dreams and the goals that we have. The last one is, you can't help somebody that thinks you're the reason for their problem. Only if you would have done something else, their life would have been different. So go into 23 looking at things differently. When I look at this room, I see all these young men, these entrepreneurs that are making things happen. I want you to look at your life for just a moment and realize that people come into your life for a season, a reason, or a lifetime. And when you see your life, I wonder what it looks like 20 years down the road. Who is it that you're mentoring? Who is it that you are preparing when it comes time for you to pass the baton? What's that look like? First 30 years of life, there are learning years. And we get all the knowledge we can. We go to school, we go to college, we go in business, we learn a trade. And so those first 30 years of all of our lives is really our learning years. We find ourselves in that place where we're making a difference in our own selves because of education. That's our learning years. We learn. We learn from others. We learn from our parents. We learn from our friends. The second 30 years of our life, those are not our learning years. The second 30 years of our life are years that we will take what we have learned and then become our earning years. Now I'm putting to work what I've learned in my first 30. Making a good living. Making the difference in the lives of others. touching others. My life of significance is bigger than just what I can earn. First 30 years, you're learning. Second 30 years, you're earning. Your last 30 years, and the most important is not the earning, it's not the learning, but it's the transfer. Now I've taken what I've learned in life and I'm making a difference because I'm giving what I have away. I love what my brother said, that he wants the end of his life to be remembered for making an impact in the lives of others. I'm going to close with a little story. We all know throughout history, Napoleon Bonaparte was a leader amongst leaders. And there came a time whenever Napoleon had gone through a great battle and he realized that he was physically not well. And Napoleon told his men, said, I want us to go home. And as the men listened to their leader and his generals, they all began to pack up and began to move. And Napoleon became very ill. When he became ill, he had told his generals, he said, I want to see my mother, but I'm not going to make it. I'm too weak in my body. I'm not going to make it. And so Napoleon Bonaparte had called his generals together and he looked at one of his generals and he says, I want you to make sure that my doctors carry my casket. His men thought, man, that's a strange request. They said, I have another request. He says, I want all the wealth and the gold that I have received in my life. I want it to be trampled under the feet of the horses that escort my body to its graveside. So they're scratching their head. You want what? You want us to take your wealth and your gold? And you want it to be trampled on the streets? And they asked, what's the third request? He said, I want to die with my hands outside the casket. And I said, why? Why would you want to do that? He said, first of all, I want the world to know that it doesn't matter how much doctors can do. When death comes, they can't stop it. Then he said, I want you to have all of my gold trampled under the feet of the horses because when death comes, it's no good. Then the last one was, why do you want your hands to be dangling outside the coffin? And his words were this, when I die, I want to have empty hands. My thought today as I get ready to transition is, are you going to live your life with full hands? Are you going to pour it into the hands of the next generation? I was thinking about our transition as a pastor. After pastoring for 43 years, I passed the baton to Pastor Kelly. And the growth of our church has been great. They've got new land. They've got money to build. And there was that window, that little window of time where I needed to be ready to pass the baton. My prayer for you today is this. When it's time to pass the baton, you've prepared that generation that will run the race. You make sure that they're ready. And so I said, that's a long ways down the road. You know what Jonathan's doing? He's raising up people. What your company's doing is raising up people to pass the baton. Don't miss your moment. God bless you.